Quick disclaimer before I start, this video contains topics that some viewers might not like, namely that and that. It won't be shown or anything, but I figured I should probably point it out. Also, I'm not a good writer. Amateur at best. Hello everyone, whoever's actually here, that is. This is sort of a follow-up to my unscripted OC lore video that made no sense. I kind of wanted to actually talk about them for once. It's probably pretty obvious, but this one is scripted. Believe it or not, there is a story here. I've written a lot about my little chuds, and they occupy my mind more than they probably should. Actually, as of right now, they're my main interest, which makes a lot of things pretty hard. I can't just find content online to look at all day because no one actually cares about them and I have to make it all myself. Anyways, first I figure I should give a rundown on who the basic main characters are. Can the guy from the last video do that, please?
Hey guys, it's me!
I can't fit in frame.
Hey guys, it's me! I'm sure you remember me from the last video. I hope. Let's start with one of the super important ones. Our good friend Wyatt over here saw the drawing from the last video. But for extra, there's a little sticky. It's not a sticky note. There's a little note of him. This is Wyatt, a random blonde guy who never leaves the house. He built our next character, who I'll get to in a second here, and his story takes place in the mid to late 1980s. He sort of becomes irrelevant after that for reasons. But I'll get to that later. Next up on the agenda is...
Whoa there, Tiger, let me stop you there. This guy doesn't have a name. They were never actually given one in canon, but you can call them whatever you want. They like to let people make up names for them. For the sake of the video, I'll be referring to them as... Chud.
This guy is the robot creation thing of Wyatt. And they've been very broken since their initial birth. Last up for the main characters, this is Christopher. This art's fucking ugly. Holy shit, I need to put an updated drawing. Right there! He's Chud's trusty best friend. He's also a massive geek! I mean, have you seen the size of those glasses? You could land a plane on those things! Anyways, he has relevance in present day. He didn't exist in the 80s, so he just comes up later. We cool? Cool. I'm done recording this section.
Alright, now I guess I should start from the top. And there's no better way to do that than with... So, Wyatt is a quite eccentric man, if it wasn't obvious by the whole creating a big sentient robot thing. But more than that, he's actually kind of a terrible person. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Let's just try and explain what's happening first. Wyatt is an incredibly anxiety-ridden man, and definitely has a lot of issues. This is the absolute worst with social interaction and people altogether. Instead of just being a bit socially awkward, but for the most part functional, he outright avoids people every chance he gets. He doesn't have any trust for anyone and is terrified of letting people get close to him. Commitment and having someone care too much about him is his worst nightmare, especially when he struggles to form a deep connection with anyone, including himself. Wyatt is someone who was probably dismissed and ignored during his early years and ended up forming this idea of people never having good intentions. He doesn't believe that any close relationships could actually be real and not have a selfish motive, and he views complex emotions as a burden and not normal. He isn't selfish, though. He often disregards and ignores himself, just as he's been shown by other people. He forgets he's a person and lets other tasks consume him fully, leaving almost no room for self-care or self-reflection. He believes deeply in something evil in the world, lying inside the very soul of every person alive. Well, that is until something changes. But before we get there, we have to talk about his incredible affinity for unexplained things plaguing the world. He has a particular fascination with the supernatural, more specifically ghosts and things of the like. Before you assume he's crazy, I'm the god of this world and, I know everything and ghosts are real here. Very real. I mean, this shouldn't stop you from calling him crazy, but on this specific thing, he's not. Anyways, he happens to live in a pretty old house that's also really haunted. You know, in his efforts to figure out mysteries and urban legends, he kinda just became one himself. People generally avoid him, and word goes around that he's not warm and welcoming. Kids probably tell ghost stories about him and make up lies about his life. What a legacy. Anywho, Wyatt is also interested in technology, electronics, all that junk. So what does any normal person do with this? Combine the two, of course! He came up with the concept of a robot, but if it had the speech and mannerisms of a human being. With the technology at his disposal at the time, the idea really only came from his wildest dreams. And wildest nightmares. What if he could harness the uncanny human-like energy from spirits and concentrate it into a machine? An artificial intelligence, haunted energy, hybrid kind of deal. Of course, this was a crazy idea, even to Wyatt himself, but he really wanted to see if he could even attempt it. He had made a few basic trinkets or whatever in the past, but this was truly ambitious. I think this might have been a sort of self-worth thing for him. Like, his only justification for existing on this earth was purely the research and work he could provide. Because without that, what's he here for? Maybe it was a subconscious desire for praise and validation from others, though he never framed it like that to himself. Either way, he was on track to create a sentient robot just to prove he could. Now, you might be thinking he's going into this without much planning ahead, and to that I say, he is. He totally is, 100%. Unfortunately, this wasn't fully proved to him until it was far too late. He went in thinking it wouldn't work and didn't formulate a plan for if it really did. What a horrible idea. The man who hates people creating a person. But now here he was. And here it was. Side tangent, I know I designed this thing, but I also designed them before I had a coherent plot and before Wyatt even existed. But now with this, apparently Wyatt is a very cute character designer. Just look at that little bow tie. So blue. Or teal. Whichever. So much wasted potential. Could've been great, buddy. Creating this robot ruined Wyatt's life, even more than it was already on track to be ruined. It's like reaching rock bottom and then noticing an additional, even deeper trench right next to it, except the trench is actually a hole that you dug yourself. Wyatt severely underestimated how well his weird voodoo magic bullshit would work, combined with his pretty exceptional engineering skills. This thing was sentient. Like, way too sentient. Wyatt hated how aware it was, and it was aware that he hated how aware it was. It acted like a clueless kid, because I guess that's kind of what it was. Now, how was Wyatt taking all of this? Well, about as well as you'd expect. He was losing his mind! Even more than usual! It was horrifying. Like a person who very clearly wasn't a person. It was uncanny, it wasn't right. Something about this felt very wrong, like he wasn't ever meant to push the limits like this. He was worried that he'd realize how wary he was of them and get upset. He was no match for a giant metal robot with human intelligence. Now, we know that they would never hurt a fly, but this was brand new territory for Wyatt. For anyone, ever, actually. And he was about the worst person to have to deal with it. He was a paranoid, antisocial, crazy recluse. Now, you may be asking why Wyatt didn't just power them off, but he made a terrifying realization really early on. Try as he might, it did nothing. They weren't controlled by their actual internal systems. They were something else entirely. It was like none of it even mattered. The body simply being a vessel that the outside energy was concentrated into, rather than a half and half sort of deal like he expected. This only made everything so much more difficult. Dismantling them was surely the only option. You know, scrapping them, taking them apart, starting over. But there was something else in the way. Something Wyatt never expected. He cared. Now, instead of it being an issue of options, it was a moral dilemma, an emotional dilemma. Now, if you remember anything from earlier, which I hope you do, this is the absolute worst, most horrifying thing that could ever happen to Wyatt. This wasn't just a surface level, I feel bad sort of care. He felt something entirely different. He felt responsible for them in a way. He had to teach them things about the world, reassure them, explain what was going on even when he wasn't sure himself. He tried to avoid them at every turn, but when you share a space with someone, it gets difficult to do so. Instead of letting this change him, it only seemed to push him further and further away. When he recognized what was happening, he panicked more than he ever had before. He avoided them, he isolated himself, he reminded himself that they were nothing more than the materials he had built them with, even though he had proven that to be false. He felt that he had to create a version of them in his head. A version of them that wasn't real. One that was replaceable. And one that he could forget about. He needed to rationalize what he was about to do. And yeah, I assume everyone saw that coming. It was never gonna end well, not with him. He dismantled them and left them to forever sit in isolation, assuming he finished the job. Little did he know, they were far from dead. They'd just be out of commission for a little while. Well, that sure was a lot for one person. Let's check in on how Wyatt's taking it all, maybe. And he's dead. Alright. Real talk, this situation made him think. It made him think more than anything in his life ever did. This led to the first real instance of self-reflection from him, the hollow feeling of guilt never leaving after what he did. He thought about himself, about his life, his choices. He wondered if he was on the wrong path altogether and too dumb to realize it until now. He never knew such deep care for someone could exist, nor did he think it would stick with him so badly. He felt helpless, and a strong feeling of self-hatred soon consumed him. Nothing could fix what he had broken, and he knew that this feeling was what he deserved. He took the cowardly way out, knowing it was selfish at the time, but the guilt was too much for him to bear in the end. Alright, double whammy. But hey, this is probably the most miserable section of the video out of the way, so that's good, right? Before we get back to where Chud went, Chud? Remember Chud? Yeah? Okay. We need to give some much-needed background on someone else. Hey, remember this stupid geek from earlier? We're gonna talk about him now. Hello, Chrissy. Hey. Aw, so cute. Aw. Christopher is a less insane character by, like, a long shot. Good for us, unless you're into that kind of thing. Fucking freak. Whatever. Christopher was born in, like... 2001 or 2002. I didn't write it. He's 24 years old now. Growing up, he didn't have the best experience. His parents are kind of just your average Southerner Republicans. They aren't the most understanding or accepting and probably preferred to parent the, quote, old-fashioned way. This was terrible news for old Chrissy over here because he was queer and neurodivergent. Gosh, come get your wokey son! Christopher excelled and struggled in school simultaneously, being exceptionally good at some subjects and useless in others. He was never really offered much help, nor did he ever want to ask for it because it never got him anywhere. That or he'd just be scolded for not doing it right the first time. He was never really a social butterfly either, preferring to stick to his own thing rather than humiliate himself by trying to make friends. He had rather isolating hobbies too, like spending his days walking around and finding abandoned structures. This'll come back later. Anywho, when he did try to make friends, the nicest response he ever got was just an awkward nod along. He was also relentlessly tormented by one particular girl. Let's call her Super Nanny, because I can only imagine modern day her looking exactly like Super Nanny. I don't know why. So, Super Nanny over here is an incredibly disciplined, no-nonsense, straight-A student. She only cared about being the best in her class, really. Spoiled rich kid with no problems in life kind of deal. So, as you can imagine, when she found out she was being beat by this nobody little four-eyes nerd in his prime subjects, she took to picking on him. It was a pretty easy target. I mean, she couldn't find any reason not to be super mean to him. Now, this didn't really make Christopher's life any worse, it just kind of made it clear to him that, at least at the time, the torment would never really end. But eventually, as most adolescent people do, he began to adapt and finally found the time to discover himself. Sure, there was a long road ahead, but cutting off his parents ASAP surely couldn't hurt. As he got older, he found it easier to make more acquaintances or friends, but he still never really found someone he could call his very best. Someone he could tell everything to, someone he could relate to, someone who could love him through and through. Until one day. On a particularly strange feeling day, Christopher decided he'd go on a walk. A long walk, like the ones he'd take those few years back. This new area was unfamiliar since he moved out, so he figured, why not explore? He eventually came to a place he assumed was abandoned, but something felt super off. Regardless, he pressed on. The place was clearly old and seemed to just have a bunch of junk piled around. He wondered if he could find anything cool. I mean, it's not like he had anything better to be doing. Well, lucky him, he did find something cool. Something that ended up being a lifetime commitment. It was Chud. Did you guess? Did you guess yet? Okay, cool. Just thought I'd let you know. Alright. So, old Chrissy over here undercovered like a crime scene, essentially. Forgotten for almost 40 years. Our little chuddy buddy is having a case of the cliche, uh-oh, I forgot my backstory! But never fear, it'll come back to him. Slowly. Whether they like it or not. Because hey, some of those memories might be better off locked away. Either way, they're back, and still mostly functional. They've just got super cool battle scars now. Christopher would be lying if he said that initially he fully intended to befriend this weird robot dude. He stuck by and listened fully out of curiosity. It freaked him out a ton, but he just couldn't pull himself away. Their backstory being so mysterious, combined with the fact that they shouldn't even be physically possible, was just too intriguing. The more he kept returning though, the more they began to remember, and the more they began to really show who they were. Christopher found himself genuinely interested in them as a person for once, and stopped treating them like some weird science experiment. Because really, when you get to know someone, they're a lot more than you find on the surface, and that's something that Christopher could really resonate with. They realized together that maybe there are people worth letting in. And boy do parents suck! Okay, I wasn't just gonna end it there. We still gotta talk about our little chud here. How did they feel about everything that happened? What kind of things did they remember? Who even are they? Well, a fully sentient robot, for one. And boy, let me tell you, does that really suck sometimes. It's like having the capacity for such intense emotion, but physically not being able to cry it out. I think that they yearn for the simple things that humans can do, even the stuff that we don't like or take for granted. Like the feeling of collapsing in bed after a long day and sleeping in the next morning. Or eating your favorite food for the first time in a while. Or the absolute worst, going swimming. They yearn for the sea like a retired boat captain. The ocean covers 70% of the planet, and they can't even dream of taking a swim. Beyond the whole yearning to be human thing, they've got a few more issues. Go figure. Thanks a lot, buddy. Now, their memory was quite compromised when they were found, to say the least. They had no idea how they got there or where they came from, but as with many things, it came back to them slowly. It was like learning how to be a person again, or, well, more like for the first time. Either way, they were able to piece together most of what was important after a while. As you can probably imagine, the more they remembered, the worse it got. Finding out your dad was a borderline sociopath who freaked out so bad he tried to kill you and then abandoned you for over 40 years wasn't exactly the easiest pill to swallow. In fact, it was so hard to swallow that they kept quiet about this for literal years. Only after they reached a sort of breaking point and felt as if they were comfortable enough with Christopher did they finally spill what was happening with them. They confided in him that they really were upset over all this, as one rightfully should be. They realized then that they didn't have to put on a front of nonchalance and were allowed to feel complex feelings about what happened. This was the first step in moving on, and realizing that they weren't gonna let Wyatt pull them down, even though he wasn't there anymore. This was their life, and they were gonna live it on their own terms. It didn't help the fact that they couldn't recall his face. Maybe he's better off lost to time. Maybe it all is, because what really matters is the present. What do I know? I don't fucking know, man.